This is Living Power with Dan Hurst.
I just spent some time working on a project that deals with the incredible pressure and oppression that preteen and teenage boys and girls put on themselves to be accepted and to feel accepted. And there is one report that says that over 90% of teenage girls consider themselves to be physically flawed. Over 90%. And that most of them will spend over 3 hours a day thinking or acting on their considered flaw. Now, 1 out of 4 of those girls will actually suffer physically debilitating depression sometime during their teenage years. Now, you think about this. There are most of our teenagers and certainly most of our teenage girls in our society consider themselves to be flawed. Consider themselves to have some sort of physical flaw. It may be minor, it may be major, but they consider themselves to be flawed. And it is such an issue for them that they spend, a great deal of their time every day dealing with that flaw in their life. And it affects the way they think about themselves. And because it affects the way they think about themselves, it affects the way they think about other people. And so they put rules and traditions on themselves to cope with these perceived flaws and failures. Now, you women know what I'm talking about. In fact, I've seen some of you just kind of nodding your head. You fathers who have daughters, you know what I'm talking about. This is a critical issue in our society today. The issue with it is that we never really quite get over that. We grow up with it. And we learn to cope with it, and we learn to deal with it, or we learn to accept it, and we just say, well, that's just the way it is, and I'm flawed, and so be it. And we never really come to grips with what really is going on in our minds and in our heads. We never really understand the real issue. God said, through the psalmist David, and he was speaking to us, giving us this truth in Psalm 139, my favorite psalm, "For you formed my inward parts." Now, I'm going to take your time reading this and stay with me on this. "For you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb." Now, there are two things that happen in that phrase. One is, you form my inward parts, the organs, what I am on the inside. But you knit together, the implication is that's the outside. The exterior, you knit me together in my mother's womb. So you formed the organs of my body, but you knit me, you designed me physically the way you wanted me to be. Think about what that verse is saying. God designed you the way He wanted you to be. Now you can blow it. I mean, you can change things around, certainly, and a lot of us do, and some of you, go through certain things because you want to look different. That's okay. If the barn needs painting, you should do it. But the point is that God knit you. He designed you. Then look at verse 14. "I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Now stop. We've heard that all of our lives. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. What does it mean? Well, the word fearful is the same word that we use for the fear of the Lord. We use that phrase also. And the word fear is the word yadi, and it means, it's a word that means, it's a Hebrew word that basically means, well, it can mean fear, like being scared, but that's not the way it's used in the sentence, and particularly in this one. It means awesome reverence. Awesome reverence. So the fear of the Lord, the awesome reverence of the Lord. But in this case, it says that you were made fearfully and wonderfully. Do you know what that says? That says that when God made you, He made you with awesome reverence. God was awesomely, there was a reverence when He made you. It was awesome for God to do this. When God was making you, He thought it an awesome, reverent thing. When God made you, when He formed your inner being and He knit you together, it was an awesome, reverent experience for God. That's what that verse is saying. You You were an awesome, reverent experience for God. So you are fearfully and wonderfully made. It was an awesome, reverent experience for God to make you. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. God intentionally made you, and when He did it, it was an awesome, reverent experience for Him. I love what the rest of that passage says. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. God knew you before you existed. He saw you. He already had a picture of you in His mind. He knew what you would be. He designed you. He had this idea, His creative mind had already determined how He was going to create you and what He was going to make you like. And in your book were written every one of them. Every one of what? Every one of the days they were formed for me. Now think about that. Think about what that phrase is saying. God formed the days for you.